Welcome to Silent Crime Case, the podcast that brings you closer to the most gripping stories from the underbelly of seemingly ordinary lives. Today we take you to the quiet, close-knit town of Fox Ridge, nestled in a picturesque valley. Fox Ridge was known for its friendly neighbors, local diner gatherings, and the simple beauty of rural life. But as we'll soon uncover, even in the most peaceful places, darkness can lurk. Nina Carrigan was an 18-year-old high school senior, brimming with promise and ambition. Her future was wide open, full of possibilities: college, business dreams, and escape from the hardships at home. But one fateful morning, her bright future was stolen from her, leaving behind a brutal crime scene and a grieving father. Fox Ridge, which hadn't seen a murder in over 2 decades, was about to be thrust into a nightmare of deceit, betrayal, and violence. This is the story of the murder of Nina Carrigan. Nina Carrigan was not your average teenager. Described by her friends as ambitious, intelligent, and charismatic, she stood out among her peers. Her bright smile and magnetic personality made her popular at Fox Ridge High School. She had a flair for acting and was deeply involved in the drama club, both as a performer and behind the scenes. Teachers praised her for her dedication to academics, with her eyes firmly set on studying business at the University of Fox Ridge. In class, Nina always spoke of her plans to one day open her own company, driven by a desire to create a future free from the troubles she faced at home. Nina often confided in her closest friends about the emptiness she felt since her mother's passing, describing it as a void she could never quite fill. This loss may have been the catalyst for the risky relationships she pursued, seeking comfort in older men who could provide the security she longed for. Life at home, however, was far from perfect. Nina's mother had passed away from cancer when Nina was just 14, and this loss left a deep emotional wound. Her father, Damon Carrigan, a dedicated police officer, struggled to juggle the demands of his job with raising his daughter alone. Working long night shifts, Damon's absence often left Nina feeling isolated, searching for companionship and comfort elsewhere. Over time, Nina began seeking relationships with older men, hoping to find the stability she missed at home. Among these older men were Merrick and Lyle Drummond, twin brothers in their 70s who lived nearby. Merrick, a flamboyant and wealthy retired used car salesman, and Lyle, a scholarly retired history teacher, both found themselves captivated by Nina's charm. Their relationship with Nina became a source of gossip in the small town, with some questioning her motives. Was she using her looks and charm to manipulate these older men, or was she merely trying to survive in a world that had been less than kind to her? Regardless of what people believed, Nina had her own plans for the future, plans that were tragically cut short. The morning of April 6, 2016, began like any other for Damon Carrigan. After finishing his night shift at the Fox Ridge Police Department, Damon returned home, expecting to find his daughter asleep in her room, as she often was at that hour. But as he walked through the front door, something felt off. The house was unusually quiet. Damon called out for Nina, but there was no response. Concern growing, Damon made his way upstairs to Nina's bedroom. As he reached the doorway, his heart sank. The scene before him was more horrific than anything he had encountered in his years as a police officer. Nina's lifeless body lay crumpled on the floor, her face bruised, blood spattered on the walls, and the room in complete disarray. Damon could hardly process the horror. Items from Nina's dresser were scattered across the floor, her bedding was torn, and the signs of a violent struggle were unmistakable. His training took over, but as a father, the devastation was unbearable. Nina had been bludgeoned with a heavy rock, and there were deep bruises around her neck, the chilling evidence of strangulation by a belt. Fighting through his shock, Damon dialed 911, his voice trembling as he reported his own daughter's murder. It was a scene no father should ever have to witness, and one that would haunt the town of Fox Ridge for years to come. Detective Madson, a veteran investigator with over 2 decades of experience, was immediately assigned to the case. Known for her sharp eye and relentless pursuit of justice, Detective Madson arrived at the Carrigan home within the hour. The crime scene was chaotic, a jarring contrast to the quiet suburban street outside. As the team worked to cordon off the area, Detective Madson began her assessment of the scene. The first thing that struck her was the brutality of the attack. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was something more sinister. The presence of both blunt force trauma and strangulation indicated that the attacker had acted with both rage and calculation. The rock used to bludgeon Nina lay beside her body, caked in blood, while the belt used in the strangulation still hung loosely from her neck. Detective Madson noted the position of Nina's body, She had clearly fought back, her fingernails showing signs of broken skin, possibly from scratching her assailant. As forensic teams worked to gather evidence, luminol was sprayed across the walls and floor, revealing additional blood splatters invisible to the naked eye. Every piece of evidence was meticulously bagged: fingerprints lifted from the dresser, strands of hair collected from the bedding, and of course the belt and rock. The murder weapons themselves. Detective Madson also observed that one of Nina's bedroom windows was slightly open. Upon closer inspection, she noticed faint scratches along the windowsill, possibly indicating that the killer had entered or exited through the window. Outside, in the soft soil of the garden, footprints were found, another vital clue. But who could have committed such a horrific crime, and why? The investigation turned toward those closest to Nina, starting with her father, Damon. Despite his grief, Damon was cooperative, recounting the events of the night before. He explained that he had been working a night shift, hoping that his alibi would be enough to clear any suspicion. Though his colleagues at the station could confirm his presence during the critical hours, Detective Madson knew that every angle had to be explored. Damon described Nina as a typical teenager, but with a complicated personal life. He admitted that they had grown distant since her mother's passing, and that he knew little about the older men Nina had started associating with: Merrick and Lyle Drummond. Could these men have had something to do with her death? The first suspect to emerge in the investigation was Merrick Drummond. Known around Fox Ridge for his larger-than-life personality, Merrick had a reputation for being both charming and competitive. During the initial investigation, another potential suspect emerged, one of Nina's co-workers from the local diner. Police discovered that he had been seen arguing with her the day before her murder. However, after an exhaustive interrogation, his alibi proved solid, leaving investigators to focus their efforts back on the Drummond brothers. At 70 years old, he was a retired used car salesman who had lived a life of luxury, still basking in the wealth he had accumulated over the years. Despite his age, Merrick maintained an active social life, often attending local events and gatherings. However, it was his relationship with Nina Carrigan that drew immediate suspicion. Merrick had become romantically involved with Nina, a fact that had raised eyebrows among the residents of Fox Ridge. While some saw Merrick as simply a lonely old man who had fallen for a much younger woman, others believed there was something more manipulative at play. Detective Madson brought Merrick in for questioning on April 7, 2016. Dressed neatly in a suit, Merrick appeared confident, though there was an air of defensiveness about him. During the interrogation, Merrick admitted to his relationship with Nina but vehemently denied any involvement in her death. He claimed that their relationship had been consensual and that he had cared deeply for her. According to Merrick, he had been at home watching a rerun of NCIS on the night of the murder. However, his alibi was shaky, and there were gaps in his timeline that Detective Madson found concerning. Further investigation revealed that Merrick had been financially supporting Nina, giving her regular sums of money. Phone records showed frequent communication between the two in the days leading up to her death, and text messages suggested a growing tension in their relationship. Could Merrick's affection for Nina have turned into something darker: jealousy, perhaps, or even rage? The next suspect to be questioned was Merrick's twin brother, Lyle. Unlike his flamboyant brother, Lyle was a quiet, introspective man. A retired history teacher, Lyle was respected in the community for his intellect and passion for education. He lived a modest life, spending most of his time reading and participating in local book clubs. Yet, like Merrick, Lyle had also formed a relationship with Nina, though he insisted it had been strictly platonic. When Detective Madson brought Lyle in for questioning, he appeared calm and collected, dressed in a tweed jacket that reflected his scholarly background. During the interrogation, Lyle described Nina as a bright, ambitious young woman who had a genuine interest in history. He denied any romantic involvement, stating that he had been at home, working on a lecture for the local historical society on the night of her murder. However, like his brother, Lyle's alibi was difficult to verify. Forensic evidence soon began to shed light on the case. The crime scene had already provided several key pieces of evidence, including the rock used to bludgeon Nina and the belt used to strangle her. But it was the discovery of a small black bag near the Snake River, just a few miles from the Carrigan home, that would prove to be the most significant breakthrough. The bag contained a blood-stained shirt and a pair of gloves. When the shirt was tested, the blood was confirmed to be Nina's. The gloves, meanwhile, were sent for fingerprint analysis. The results were damning. Merrick Drummond's fingerprints were found on the gloves, placing him directly at the scene of the crime. Additionally, further analysis of Merrick's phone records showed that he had been near Nina's house at the time of her death, contradicting his earlier claim that he had been at home watching television. Surveillance footage from a local gas station also captured Merrick's car driving toward the Carrigan residence on the night of the murder. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, Detective Madson turned her attention back to Merrick. His confident demeanor from the earlier interrogation had already begun to waver, and now, with this new evidence in hand, the detectives prepared to confront him once more. As Detective Madson dug deeper into Nina's personal life, more shocking details came to light. What had once seemed like a tragic crime of passion was unraveling into a complicated web of deceit and manipulation. Both Merrick and Lyle Drummond had more than just casual relationships with Nina. There were secrets that none of them wanted to come to light. It was revealed that Nina had been simultaneously involved with both brothers. At first, each Drummond brother believed he was the sole recipient of her affection, but soon, the truth came out. The jealousy between the brothers, always competitive with one another, boiled over. Merrick and Lyle had clashed over many things in life, business, status, even relationships. But Nina was different. She was young, attractive, and a symbol of their ability to still command the attention of a younger woman. Nina, it seemed, had her own reasons for keeping both brothers close. Her financial troubles, combined with the instability she felt at home, may have driven her to manipulate the two older men, each unaware of the other's involvement at first. But when Merrick discovered that Lyle was also seeing Nina, their once playful rivalry turned into something much more sinister. Merrick began to feel deeply betrayed, not just by Nina, but by his own brother. Text messages recovered from Nina's phone showed that she had been growing frustrated with Merrick's possessiveness. In the days leading up to her death, she sent several messages to friends complaining that Merrick was becoming overbearing, even threatening. On the night of the murder, it was clear that a confrontation between Nina and Merrick had reached a breaking point. The walls were closing in on Merrick Drummond. With mounting evidence and pressure from the investigation, his confident facade finally began to crack. After being confronted with the forensic evidence, including the gloves and the blood-stained shirt, Merrick's story unraveled. Detective Madson and her team brought Merrick in for another round of questioning. This time, they presented him with the overwhelming evidence: the fingerprints on the gloves, the surveillance footage, and the phone records that placed him near Nina's house on the night of her murder. Merrick's previous claims about watching television at home collapsed under the weight of this damning proof. Faced with no other way out, Merrick finally broke down and confessed. The story he told was one of anger, betrayal, and desperation. As the pressure mounted, Merrick's once unshakable composure began to crumble. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead, his voice shaking as he tried to maintain his story. But in the end, it was the weight of his own guilt that broke him. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," he whispered, his eyes filled with regret. On the night of the April 5, 2016, Merrick had gone to confront Nina at her home. He had discovered that she had been seeing Lyle, and in his mind, Nina had played both brothers for fools. The argument between them quickly escalated, with Merrick demanding answers and accusing Nina of betraying him. In a fit of rage, he grabbed a rock from the garden and struck her. When she tried to scream, Merrick wrapped a belt around her neck and strangled her until she stopped moving. Merrick admitted that after realizing what he had done, he panicked. He fled the scene, taking the gloves and the bloodied shirt with him. He had driven to the Snake River and discarded the evidence, hoping that no one would ever find it. But the truth had a way of catching up with him. Merrick Drummond's trial began on May 20, 2016 in Fox Ridge County Court. The courtroom was packed with members of the local community, all eager to see justice served. Reporters from local news outlets, including the Fox Ridge Times, covered the case extensively, with every twist and turn scrutinized by the media. Nina's family, devastated by the loss of their daughter, attended the trial every day, seeking closure for the brutal crime that had stolen their beloved daughter from them. The prosecution laid out a clear case against Merrick, presenting the forensic evidence, the surveillance footage, and Merrick's own confession. The blood-stained shirt, the gloves with Merrick's fingerprints, and the phone records that placed him at the scene of the crime painted a grim picture. Merrick's defense attorney attempted to argue that his client had acted in the heat of the moment and that the murder had not been premeditated. He pleaded for leniency, suggesting that Merrick's advanced age and fragile emotional state should be taken into account. But the jury was unmoved. After several days of testimony and evidence, they reached a verdict. On June 15, 2016, Merrick Drummond was found guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the verdict was read, the weight of the decision settling on everyone present. Nina's father, Damon Carrigan, sat stoically, his grief mixed with a sense of justice finally being served. Merrick was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, Honorable Daniel Thompson, cited the particularly brutal nature of the crime and the betrayal involved as reasons for the harsh sentence. As the verdict was read, a wave of emotion swept through the courtroom. Nina's father, Damon, gripped the edge of the bench, his knuckles white as he fought back tears. Behind him, Nina's friends from high school hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. For them, the verdict brought closure, but it didn't heal the wounds left by Nina's death. For the Carrigan family, the verdict brought a measure of closure, but the pain of losing Nina would never truly heal. The murder of Nina Carrigan and the trial of Merrick Drummond left an indelible mark on the town of Fox Ridge. For a community that prided itself on its peaceful small-town charm, the crime shattered the illusion of safety that many had taken for granted. The town's residents, who had watched the trial unfold through news reports and whispers at local diners, were left grappling with the horror of the crime that had occurred in their midst. For many residents of Fox Ridge, the murder of Nina Carrigan shattered their sense of safety. Neighbors who once left their doors unlocked began installing security systems, while parents kept a closer watch over their children. "I never thought something like this could happen here," said one local resident. "It's like we're living in a different town now." Damon Carrigan, Nina's father, took an extended leave of absence from the police department. The loss of his daughter was a wound that time alone could not heal. In the months following the trial, Damon became an advocate for raising awareness about domestic violence and the dangers of manipulative relationships. He spoke at local schools and community events, hoping to prevent another tragedy like the one that had befallen his family. Nina's friends and classmates, still reeling from the loss of someone they had known and loved, gathered in her memory. A scholarship fund was established in her name, with the goal of supporting young women from Fox Ridge who, like Nina, had dreams of going to college and building a better life. The community came together, determined to honor Nina's memory and ensure that her life was not defined by the horrific crime that ended it. As time passed, the town of Fox Ridge began to heal, but the memory of Nina Carrigan remained, a reminder of the fragility of life and the hidden darkness that can lurk even in the most peaceful places. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Silent Crime Case. The story of Nina Carrigan is one that will stay with us for a long time, a tragic reminder of how jealousy, manipulation, and betrayal can lead to the most unthinkable acts. But what do you think about this case? Was justice truly served, or are there more layers to this story than what the court revealed? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Be sure to leave a comment below and let us know what you think. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep looking for the truth, no matter how deep it may be buried.